The LouieTeeNetwork is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description.
Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the Command Post Live. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I, of course, am your Commander-in-Chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. So, we are officially 3 weeks away from day one, the 2024 NFL Draft. And as we get closer and closer, the excitement and the buzz builds. I think this is one of the most anticipated drafts for this organization in quite some time. I won't do the prisoner of the moment thing and say ever, because there have been very anticipated drafts in the past. The biggest difference in some of those were we knew who we were taking. 2012, it was a highly anticipated draft, but we knew we were taking Robert Griffin III. In 2020, highly anticipated draft, but we knew we were taking Chase Young. For the first time, we hold the number 2 overall pick, and we have no idea who we're going to spend it on. That said, the likelihood is it's going to be a quarterback, and we've spent so much time talking about what Washington will do there. We've even created a civil war behind the decision that they're mulling over, whether it'll be Jaden Daniels or Drake May. You could even add J.J. McCarthy into that conversation if you'd like, but I think it's really a two-man race at this point. And I've already told you, I'm going inside where it's safe. I mean, bullets are flying. People are throwing haymakers. If you're outside and you're not careful and you're in the middle and you're minding your business, you can get caught with something. I've already been hit multiple times. I'm going inside. I told you guys that the last video. I mean, it's gotten so out of control. I was talking to Miss Perry, Condo Pete. Shout out to Miss Perry. And we were talking, and she said, I hope they get this right because we can't do this again in 3 or 4 years, because this is a nightmare. This is a mess. And it is. I mean, it's gotten to the point now where I could be doing any video, podcast, command post. I could be talking about anything. I could be talking about college basketball. I could be talking about music. And I'll look at the comment section briefly, and there's a full-on war going on about the 2 quarterbacks. And I could say the most outlandish thing that should change the course of the conversation, i.e., man, I had a massive doo-doo stain in my drawers while at Terry McLaurin's house. 1, you too damn old to be having doo-doo stains. 2, why are you divulging this information to us? 3, you never told us you met Terry McLaurin before. And 4, what were you doing at his house and how did that happen? These are all really good questions if this story were in fact true. And you would have to then do a deep dive. There needs to be follow-up questions. We need answers. I could say something as extreme as that, and there will still be someone that the very next comment after I say that will be, Drake May sucks. Jaden Daniels is too slim. If they pick Jaden Daniels, they're going to make a mistake. And I'm just looking and saying, did you not hear anything that I just said? But that is where we are right now. I said all of that to say this, however, though. So much emphasis is being placed on what Washington does at number 2 overall, and rightfully so. It is the biggest decision they will make in this entire draft. They've got 9 selections, and none will be bigger than the one they make at number 2 overall. As a matter of fact, you could combine the weight of the other 8 selections, and they will not equal that of what they do at number 2. Still, for as much conversation that is surrounded day number 1 for Washington, do you understand that the bulk of Washington's draft, the real meat and potatoes of what's going to transpire in the 2024 NFL draft for the Washington Commanders, is going to happen not on day 1, although there could be some extra fireworks. We'll talk about that tonight. But rather, day 2 is where you should be focusing a lot of your attention. They're only going to select one player, potentially, in day 1. 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th, 5 of Washington's 9 selections come in day number 2. Essentially, what I'm telling you is their draft is almost over. By the time they end with that 100th overall pick in the 3rd round, they have the final pick in the 3rd round. When they spin that selection, 6 of their 9 selections will be in the books, meaning they'll only have 3 picks left, and they don't even have a single selection in the 4th or the 6th round. So of the remaining 4 rounds that exist, 2 of the 4, Washington won't even have a selection in them. So I'm telling you, the second day of the draft is where most of your energy, your time, your resources should be spent. Yet, we're having a civil war over one selection. Again, I get it. But tonight, we're going to change the narrative. Tonight, we're going to talk about day 2 and the activity that may go on with the Commanders in what I think is going to be the most important day of this draft for the Commanders when it's all said and done. Because again, while that number 2 overall pick is very important, the most important pick in the draft, no one's debating that, you still have a roster to build. And one player does not make a roster. It surely does help. Ask the Houston Texans. It sure does help when you get that one position right, that one player right. But they did a lot of other things right too, did the Houston Texans, to put themselves in that position to then take advantage of a quarterback coming in and a play caller having success and everybody being on one accord and hitting the ground running. A lot of other things were done there. Again, defensive rookie of the year and offensive rookie of the year, okay, the Texans had last year. So it's not like one guy by himself did all of that. They won games last year without C.J. Stroud, believe it or not. So we're going to talk about day 2 of the draft, because day 2, to me, is going to be so impactful. You could argue the most impactful day for the Commanders. Now, before we get to day 2 overall, I do want to first talk about some first round activity, because in order to focus in on the 2nd round and the 3rd round and day 2 in particular, you have to first take a look at what is going to transpire in front of you in day number 1, because that's ultimately what's going to help decide what Washington does in day 2, and ultimately what they may come back into the 1st round to do as well. So essentially, what I've done is I've gone through the 1st round with a semi fine-tooth comb. I've taken that comb, I've gone over the 1st round multiple times, and I've come up with a rough estimate of what's to transpire. Now, these numbers are going to vary, obviously, and we'll see what ultimately happens, but it's going to be somewhere in this vicinity, these positions. I bring this up because I think there could be some spillage for the Commanders and other teams. The Commanders don't have the 1st pick of the 2nd round, nor the 2nd pick of the 2nd round, or the 3rd pick for that matter of the 2nd round. They have the 4th pick currently of the 2nd round. And so because they have the 4th pick in the 2nd round, There are going to be other teams that can leap in front of them, teams that will already have selections in front of them that can benefit from that spillage potentially, and we may get none of it. But we're going to talk about what I think ultimately is going to become of the first round. So let's start there. So we're going to go through every position, and we're going to guess as to how many of those at that position come off the board, right? So quarterback, I think the prevailing thought has been 5. That's the magic number, right? That's the sweet spot, 5. I've seen this song and dance before, though, and I'm starting to get that same feeling I got last year. And in past years when we pushed these quarterbacks up the board only for them to rightfully land where they belong. I remember in 2019, I was very guilty of this. This was the first time where I kind of got that cold, hard dose of reality and that slap in the face of some cold water to wake my ass up about how quarterbacks get pushed up all process long. But once the real evaluators, staff members get involved, these guys go usually where they're supposed to go. 19, I had Drew Lock in the first round. And we were talking about Haskins, which I wasn't a big fan of. I said I wouldn't take him with a first round pick. He'd be a second round pick. Daniel Jones, who I wasn't a big fan of. Kyler Murray. We did all of this conversation. We had all this conversing about Drew Lock, and I was a big Drew Lock fan, and so was Jay Gruden. And nobody took Drew Lock in the first round. He ultimately goes in the second round, and that's probably where he belonged. Obviously, we've seen how his career's turned out. Probably ended up going where he was supposed to go. We've seen drafts like the one last year. Everybody's talking Will Levis. Hell, at one point, Will Levis was rumored to be in the discussion for the number 1 overall pick. Will Levis didn't even go in the first round, right? We see this happen quite often. I've seen this at least 4 or 5 times in the 12 years that I've been really covering the draft. I've seen this at least 4 or 5 times, right? Geno Smith, all process long, first round pick. Geno Smith said, I only packed 1 suit. Geno Smith's ass didn't go into the second round. I've seen this happen multiple times. So I'm starting to get that feeling that we've built up Bo Nix, we've built up Michael Penix Jr., and neither one of these dudes are going in the first round. That's what it's starting to feel like to me. Now, I could be wrong about that. I don't think 6 guys are going in the first round. I don't think we're going to get all 6. I just don't see that happening. And truth be told, I think it's only going to be 4 that go in the first round. And if a 5th goes, not shocked. Not shocked at all. But I don't think it's going to be a 5th guy early. If a 5th guy goes, it'll be later in the first round where you either come back into the first round or one of these other teams that we're not thinking about taking a quarterback, take one to place behind their current starter to allow him to just sit and kind of draft and stash for a future rainy day, right? We'll see what happens. The number right now for me is 4 or 5. I don't think 6 is going in the first round, right? So we'll go with 4 or 5 quarterbacks. There will be 0 running backs going this year in the first round. Not a single one. Pretty sure that's how that's going to go. Feel really confident about that. Wide receivers. This has been a hot topic of conversation. The Bills now trading away Stephon Diggs feels like it created yet another void for a team that will be needy at the receiver position in the first round. The Chiefs could go first round wide receiver. The Titans could go first round wide receiver. The Titans could go first round offensive tackle. I think they're more likely to go tackle. But the Giants, the Chargers, and the Cardinals all are going to go first round wide receiver if the Giants don't go first round quarterback, right? So again, I expect at least 5. At least 5. The Ravens, after not re-upping with ODB, they could go receiver in the first round. So The number for me at receiver starts at 5. It gets as high as 6. I don't see a 7th receiver going in the first round. 6 is the most. 5 is the most comfortable number, but it's 5 or 6 receivers in the first round. We're only going to have one tight end in the first round. One. And that's Brock Bowers. That is it. No other tight end is going to hear his name called in the first round. Then you get to offensive line. And this is going to combine both tackles and interior offensive linemen. From a tackle perspective, you could easily see 6 or 7 guys go, and then you could see tacked on top of that another 1 or 2 interior guys go. JPJ could go. I think Graham Barton is going to go. And then if there's another guy, it'll be JPJ more likely than not. Right? So either it's going to be 8 with the 6 tackles and then the 2 interior, or it's 9 with 7 tackles and 2 interiors. I highly doubt that another interior sneaks into the first round. Just don't see that happening. So that number to me depends on, are there 6 tackles that come off the board or are there 7? I think the number right now is 6. Okay. Then you throw in the other 2 interiors and you've got a total of 8 offensive linemen going in the first round. Now, we're going to stick a pin in that. We're going to come back to that conversation in particular. Okay. Stick a pin in offensive line. We'll be back there. Edge rushers. How many of those come off the board in the first round? The number is either 4 or 5, right? So right now it feels like 4 is going to be the magic number. Now, a 5th could come off the board and I would not be shocked. Right now it feels like Jared Verse, Latu. It feels like Dallas Turner. And the toss-up here is Chop Robinson or the edge rusher from Missouri, right? Those are the 2 that kind of stick out like a sore thumb for me right now as the guy that's going to either bring up the rear with the edge rushers in the first round or both of them go. I think one of those 2 go, one of them isn't going to go. Right now, I'm getting the sense that the odd man out is going to be Chop Robinson. Super, super explosive and talented, but super, super raw. And I think that coupled with his size is going to allow teams to convince themselves to go in a different direction. So I think there's 4 edge rushers going in the first round. There could be 5. All right. No more than 5. 5 is the most. 4 right now feels like the magic number. 4 feels like the number that's the most right. Defensive tackles. This right here is, to me, the position that exhibits the most opportunity for spillage into the second round. Because I think there are first round caliber defensive tackles that won't be selected in the first round. If you're having 4 or 5 quarterbacks, 5 or 6 receivers, 8 or 9 offensive linemen, and 4 or 5 edge rushers, somebody's got to suffer because you still got 4, 5, or 6 corners going in the first round. Some position has to suffer. I think it's defensive tackle. There should be no less than 3 defensive tackles going in the first round. The likelihood is there's only 1. That's what it feels like right now. Byron Murphy II feels like the only defensive tackle that goes in the first round. Now, that could change, obviously. Johnny Newton could go in the first round. Braden Fisk could go in the first round. The other Texas tackle, Devondre Sweat, could go in the first round. Sweat is more of a luxury item, if you ask me. Like, you specifically need a road grader and a space eater and a guy to plug in the middle of your defense and stop the run. Generally, those guys don't go in the first round, right? You can get that guy in the second and the third round. But those other guys, Braden Fisk, Johnny Newton, Byron Murphy the second, all of those dudes should be first round picks because they can all stop the run. They can all get to the other side of the line of scrimmage and make plays on the opposite side. They can all get to the quarterback. Hence, they all have first round talent, if you ask me. And yet, I only think one, possibly two at the most, are going to go in the first round. If that is in fact the case, you're going to have some spillage. Could be a little, could be a lot. But I think that's where the spillage may take place. Linebackers, it feels like 0 linebackers going in the first round. There could be one. There could be one. The Cooper kid from Texas A&M has an outside shot. I don't see it happening. Okay? Don't see it happening. I don't see anybody biting on linebacker in the first round this year. I think everyone's going to wait till the second and the third round to start, pulling the trigger on these linebackers. I don't see any of them hearing their name in day one. Same can be said for the safety position. I think that's a big goose egg right now. Tyler Lubin seems to be the only guy, safety out of Minnesota, the only guy that has a minute chance, an outside shot, and it's way outside. We're talking Dame Lillard, Steph Curry, way outside range to get into the first round. I don't see it happening. Super long shot. So then there's corner. And right now, I see 4, 5, upwards of 6 corners going in the first round. Another premium position to go along with tackle, quarterback, and edge rusher. Those are your 4 premium positions, right? And you could add wide receiver in there as a 5th, but to me, if we're going in the pecking order, receiver would be all the way at the bottom of that list. Anyway, 4 seems a bit low. 5 seems like the money spot. 6 seems a bit high. Quinyon Mitchell, more likely than not, the first corner off the board. Terrion Arnold, whether he's second or third, doesn't matter. He's coming off the board in the first round. I think it gets interesting after the first 2 corners. The Iowa corner has been cleared now. I think he's having a private workout for teams here, in a bit. He's intriguing. Hey, he could end up in the first round. It kind of feels like there's a buzz that's been created for him. We'll see, right? You got the Clemson corner. Nate Wiggins, another guy that feels first roundish to me. I feel like Ennis Rickstraw has lost steam. He did not have a great combine. And I think he's losing a bit of steam. He could still go in the first round. I don't think he will, though. But you never know. All it takes is one team to say, to hell with all that shit you're talking about. I like the kid, right? That's all it takes is one team to like him. I said all of that to say this. It feels like 4 or 5 guys at the cornerback position go in the first round. If that is in fact the case, then you get to the late stages of the first round, and this is when it gets interesting for Washington. I've told you that there's one name, and I'm going to stand firm on this. This is one of those things I'm standing on business for this draft. I think there's one name that Washington will trade back into the first round for, because I don't see any of the other tackles dropping in this draft. Somebody's got to fall into Washington's wheelhouse, somewhere in that 24, 25, 26 range. That's where Washington's targeting. They're not trading all the way back up to 21. I mean, they could, theoretically speaking, but that's a little bit much. 24, 25, 26 is that range where you feel good. You're not going to have to give up a whole hell of a lot. You're going to have to give up something if you're getting back into the first round and you're asking a team to remove themselves completely from the first round. You're going to have to give up some stuff. But it's not as much as you close that gap between where your first, second round pick is and where their pick is in the first round. I don't see Washington trading back up into the teens or anything like that. It'll be right in the middle of the 20s, 24, 25, 26. Here's the name to look for, if you ask me, because there's not a lot of tape. Super drippy, this kid is, right? With all kinds of talent and athleticism and size and everything you're looking for. However, not a ton of tape, injury history, hasn't been able to really work out during the offseason, got injured again at the combine, wasn't able to work out at his pro day. And so the guy that I think has a chance, and all it takes is one team to say, yeah, I heard all of that shit. Yeah, but I see the talent here, and I see the kid, and I'm willing to take the chance. And trust me, there's going to be a team out there potentially that's going to do that, which is what makes this highly unlikely. But if there is a tackle that will fall in this draft, it is Amarius Mims of Georgia. That is the only tackle I think Washington will be willing to come back into the first round to select. If somebody takes him at 18 or 16 or 19, I don't think there's another tackle, because Fatanu will be gone, Fuaga will be gone, Latham will be gone, Alt will be gone, more likely than not, Fashanu will be gone. Like, those guys are going to go. Alt's going top 10. Fuaga may go top 10, if not 10, 11, 12, somewhere in that neighborhood. And then the other ones are going to just fall in line. And before you know it, you look up and 5 or 6 tackles are gone before 22, right? The one guy that might still be available to me is Amarius Mims. And if he is, I think that's the guy Washington will be willing to pull the trigger on, go back up into the first round to select. We've talked about the scenario where Washington trades back into the first round to get a tackle. And I've even said, hey, don't just limit it to tackle. It could be corner. It could be wide receiver. I doubt that they go back into the first round for those positions, but I wouldn't sleep on another position. But to me, the one position that you're willing to give up some of this very precious draft capital for is tackle. And if you're going to give it up, you're going to give it up for a guy that you look at and say, he could end up being the best tackle in this draft if he stays healthy and he proves to be the guy that we think he can be. You're not trading up into the first round for Tyler Guyton or Jordan Morgan. You're better off just sitting there at 36 or 40 and seeing what falls to you. And if you don't love it there, then just waiting until the third round or packaging up a couple of thirds to go back up into the second and make it make more sense. Amarius Mims, to me, is the only tackle I think Washington will be monitoring for first-round purposes, looking to see if he falls. He's the only one that has a chance to fall. So now we're in day 2. I've given you kind of the breakdown of day 1. Here are some names that, to me, if I'm sitting there at 36 and these names are available, to hell with a need, to hell with tackle or this or that. If these guys are available, You prioritize them as where you have them on your board, and you take whichever one is the best. Chop Robinson, who they've already met with, used one of their top 30 official visits on. So clearly they're interested. And what that says to me is, bro, if you're there at 36, we're interested. Makes a lot of sense. He could be. Of those edge rushers, I think he's the one. The two Robinsons have a chance to be there at 36. I want nothing to do with the Missouri Robinson. Okay. Want nothing to do with Darius. Is it Darius? Make sure it's Darius. I don't want to be messing up people's names. I want nothing to do with Darius Robinson. Make sure I get that right. But Chop, I'm all about it. Sign me up. Right? So if Chop Robinson is there, I think you pull the trigger. Unless Johnny Newton or Braden Fisk are there as well, and they're higher on your board than that of Chop Robinson. Now, you could say to yourself, Louie T, we already have Deron Payne and we have Jonathan Allen. Why would you take a defensive tackle? My response to you is, why not? Why not? Do you love Fedarian Mathis? Do you love Captain Insano? One thing we have to take into consideration in Dallas was Dan Quinn did an assortment of things on that defensive line. And he was rotating bodies in and out of that bitch. And at times there'd be 3 defensive tackles on the field and 1 edge rusher. There'd be 3 edge rushers, 1 D tackle, no defensive tackles, all edge rushers. Like, you don't know what combination he's going to put on the field. He's trying to get the best guys on the field for that particular situation. And so there could be an instance where Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, and a Braden Fisk are the best guys to have on the field with Dorrance Armstrong. And that's what you're rolling with on a 2nd and 7. Again, you want to get the best player that you can possibly get in these situations. And with the free agent activity, they've put themselves in a position to say, to hell with any needs per se, let's take the best player available. I love me some Braden Fisk. I love me some Johnny Newton. And if those dudes are there, you got to consider taking those guys at 36. They won't be there at 40. The likelihood is if they don't get selected in the first round, they probably won't even make it to 36. That'd be my guess. Unless, and this is a really likely scenario, 1 or 2 of these quarterbacks don't go in the first round, and then you get those quarterback needy teams like, say, Vegas and Denver starving to come up and get these dudes at the top of the 2nd round. That's very likely as well. And if that is in fact the case, even better for us, because that means more spillage, right? Somebody's coming up in front of us to go get a quarterback. That means another one of these position players isn't being selected. Speaking of which, cornerback is still a massive need. They're going to address corner at some point in this draft. The question isn't if they're going to address it, it's when. The prevailing thought says they're not going to do it early. Not going to do it in the 2nd round. Maybe they do it in the 3rd. But how I'm feeling is they'll look to address it in day 3 with one of those 2 5th-round picks. That's what it feels like right now. But if you're looking at what they've done from a visits standpoint, Cam Hart and the Boston College corner, those are 3rd-round type corners. So it'd be interesting to see like where they are at corner, but I think they're assuming Nate Wiggins won't be there at 36. And I don't know how they feel about him. There are mixed reviews on Nate Wiggins. He's not everybody's cup of tea. And I get it. But we need guys that can cover. We need guys that can run. Nate Wiggins can do both. Does he always want to tackle? Not always. Right? But he's got some things you can't teach. Either you have it or you don't. And if you're going to play man-to-man, you need guys who can cover man-to-man. And Nate Wiggins can do that. I think he's going to go in the first round. I don't think he'll be around at 36. But in the event that he is, if you're Washington, you'd be really hard-pressed to find another guy in the draft at that position moving forward that can do the things that Nate Wiggins can do. And so, do you pull the trigger there at 36? Just another name to mention that if he's there, you have to strongly consider pulling the trigger. I've talked about this player ad nauseum in day two, specifically the second round. I'm hoping, and there's an outside chance he could get to the third round. I wouldn't press my luck. I don't like to play the no whammy, no whammy, no whammy stop game in the draft. Because usually by the time you get your shit together and you're ready to press the button, when you hit that button, you land on a whammy, right? Waiting on a guy to fall into your lap is not a smart choice during the draft. Get your guy when you feel the need to get your guy. To hell with what everybody else is telling you is good value or not good value. Get your guy. My argument for Jatavion Sanders, tight end out of Texas, is and remains as follows. Do you want the wide receiver that's the 7th, 8th, 9th best receiver in the draft? Or do you want the second best tight end in this draft? Which do you value more? You say it's a deep wide receiver draft class. That's what you say. Then you shouldn't mind getting the 10th or 11th or 12th best receiver in the draft if it's such a deep draft class. The cupboard isn't bare at receiver for Washington, mind you. Okay. I would be perfectly fine with inserting a Jermaine Burton into this mix that we have and continuing on. I have no issues with inserting a Jermaine Burton. I know a lot of us want to be greedy, right? We want Xavier Legette. We want Ricky Pearsall. We want something that looks, smells, feels elite. Yeah, that'd be nice. But I'd be perfectly fine with a Jermaine Burton at pick 100, right there at the end of the third round. And I wouldn't even blink. So what I'm telling you is, you want the 7th or 8th best receiver? Or you want the second best tight end, the clear-cut second best tight end in this draft? Not even close. Second best tight end in this draft. To me, it's a no-brainer. I'm going to take the guy with the highest upside of the tight end position outside of Brock Bowers, and the guy that is the second best tight end in this draft over the 7th or 8th best receiver. Now, speaking of receivers, as we get to that 36-40 area, I can't help but bring up two former University of Texas wide receivers because they offer you different things. Adonai Mitchell feels like a first-round receiver, feels like a late first-round receiver. If the Bills do nothing, in terms of moving up to go get one of these elite receivers that will exist the top 10 picks to top 12 picks of this draft, if they decide we're just going to stand pat, Adonai Mitchell feels like a Buffalo Bill to me. He just does. He feels like he gives you the ability to replace Stephon Diggs with a guy that has the speed, the size, the ability to leap and go get the football. He seems like he fits the prototype of what a number one is supposed to look like. Will he perform like one? Don't know. But he feels like he has all the traits to be a number one receiver. That said, if he's sitting there at 36, you have to consider it. If you're Washington, we've been looking for size. This is a 6'2" wide receiver. We've been looking for more speed. This is a 4'3", 40 guy. We've been looking for a guy to go up and get the football. I don't know if there's a higher leaping receiver in this draft. There may have been guys with higher vertical jumps at the combine and at their pro day. I challenge you to go find a guy that's leaping higher in an actual game to attack the football than Adonai Mitchell. I challenge you to go find that guy. Adonai Mitchell, go to that Texas playoff game against Washington and go look at his touchdown grab in the late stages of the fourth quarter. Tell me that doesn't look like some Michael Jordan type shit against Craig Elo, where he's steadily going up to get the football. He jumps way too soon. The defender goes up, the defender goes down. And Adonai Mitchell kind of just suspends in midair. And as he's coming down, he reaches up and snatches the ball. And you go, damn, you mistimed your jump and you still out jump the defender by about 3 seconds. There aren't many guys in the draft doing that. So he's a guy you got to consider. And then you got to consider his teammate. When a guy breaks the combine record for the fastest 40 in history of the scouting combine at 4.21, and he can actually play. This isn't John Ross, where the production and the ability to actually play didn't match the excitement based off the time. There's substance behind this 4.21 40. I know we want size at receiver, but you can't begin to game plan to stop 4.21 40, and that's a legit 4.21 40 on the football field. If you've never seen Xavier Worthy play, he's fast, really fast. We haven't had a receiver like that since Deshaun Jackson. We don't have receivers. Everybody, oh, Terry's a 4.3. Terry doesn't look like that. Curtis was a 4.3. Curtis didn't look like that. Deshaun Jackson was the last guy that scared teams to death with his speed. There are many instances where Terry gets one-on-one down the field, and that's why he's able to make some of those plays. A lot of times last year, Sam threw it up to Terry, and he just didn't come down with it, right? There weren't always great balls, right? They weren't always in the best positions, but number one receivers, you want them to go and find a way to make the quarterback right. And more times than not throughout his career, Terry's done that, whether it's been for Alex Smith or for Taylor Heineke or Dwayne Haskins. He's done it time and time again. He didn't do it as much last year for some reason. He didn't do it as much. However, the reason you're able to do that is because Terry often finds himself in some situations where he gets one-on-one because they're not terrified by his speed. Now, he can run by guys, and he's done it plenty of times in his career, but it's not the kind of speed where you go, bro, we better keep somebody over the top. Like Tyreek Hill came here, and we put Quan Martin on him, and he literally at the line of scrimmage looked and said, bro, you see this shit, Tua? Tua's like, yeah, you damn right I see this shit. He took 3 steps and went like this, put his hand in the air like Randy Moss. Hey, I'm open. Throw me that bitch. They disrespect me. Remember what he said after the game? Not once, but twice we disrespected this man with single coverage. And what did he do? 2 touchdowns. You know what he said after the game? I was actually surprised. It's almost as if they didn't know who I was. Yeah, that's what it felt like in the moment watching the shit. Do y'all not know who number 10 is? That's two dudes all the time. He didn't get one-on-one coverage ever. Anything vertical with 1-0 running, two dudes over the top. That's what Xavier Worthy brings to the table if you draft him. Keep in mind, Cliff Kingsbury has a history with guys like Xavier Worthy, most notably Hollywood Brown. Hollywood! Who had some really good seasons in Arizona under Cliff Kingsbury. Or one season, if I'm not mistaken, under Cliff Kingsbury. But it was a good one. Either way, that's another guy that I myself would be taking a look at. And I think he'll be there. Now, a team like Kansas City, we know they're always looking for their new Tyreek Hill. They moved on from MVS, who was an abject disaster and epic fail last season. He was supposed to be the speed guy, but he couldn't catch. So they moved on from him. They did bring back Mecole Hardman, but they've already established that he's all right, but he's not real. So now they may be going back into the well and looking for that guy. Now, they brought in Hollywood Brown. So conventional wisdom says, well, if they got Hollywood Brown, they don't need another one of these speed merchants. They signed Hollywood Brown to a one-year deal, okay? Don't put it past Kansas City to have the insurance policy already in place for when Hollywood Brown leaves next season. They are, being the Chiefs, are always playing chess, not checkers. So I'm just telling you, Xavier Worthy is another name I'd take a look at 36 and or 40. As a guy that brings something to the table that very few in this league do. And there's something you can't account for. I don't give a damn. That's the kind of stuff that keeps you up at night. That kind of speed keeps you up at night as a defensive coordinator. So when I look at day 2 for Washington, to me, the opportunities are endless as to what they can do. They could knock down so many positions with those 5 selections. And I think where things get really interesting is if they don't trade back into the first round, because doing so would either cost you some capital for next year's draft, or it's going to cost you a couple of picks in day 2, right? Going to cost you one of your seconds, and it's going to probably cost you one of your thirds as well. If you don't trade back into the first round and you kind of stand pat with what you have going into day 2, what to me is the most fascinating of the 5 selections, keep in mind, as I mentioned at the top of the show, Washington's, the bulk of their draft is in day 2. 5 of the 9 selections, 36, 40, 67, 78, 100, all in day number 2, second and third round selections. You've already made the second overall pick. So by the time day 2 ends, you would have spent 6 of your 9 selections, only having 3 left. So day 2 is where it's at. Keep in mind, you don't have a 4th round pick. So you better get busy in that 3rd round. Now, I'm very fascinated with the idea of Washington trading back with one of those 3rd round picks. I'd prefer to keep 67 right where it is. 78 is the one where I'm looking and I'm saying, hey, if somebody's interested, hit me. I'm open. Hit me. Because I want a 4th round pick. I don't want to go an entire round with no draft selections. I'd be willing to move back 7, 8, 9, 10 spots in the 3rd round to pick up a 4th round pick. Just one. Give me something to close that gap. Because to me, the difference between having to overdraft a running back, maybe overdraft a cornerback, is having a 4th round pick and not having a 4th round pick. To me, these running backs that we think have a chance to be really good, and there are a bunch of them in this draft, right there in that first wave of running backs. I'm not really too interested. Maybe 1 or 2 guys pique my interest as you get into that 5th round range. Maybe 1 or 2. I was really impressed with the kid out of Purdue who was an ex-receiver turned running back. He offers you a little something as a pass catcher out of the backfield, but I'm looking at those top tier running backs, and I want one of those speed guys. And there aren't a bunch of speed dudes in this year's draft class. I don't think you have to spend a 3rd round pick on these running backs, though. Maybe 1 or 2 of them may go in the 3rd, but I think the sweet spot for those guys are the 4th round. When it's all said and done, I think the sweet spot is going to be the 4th round. You don't have a 4th round pick. So if you really like one of these running backs, so if you really like one of these corners, to me, you're going to have to pull the trigger at 100. And it may be a little early at 100. You trade back from 78, hell, even 67. That one, to me, is okay to trade back from if certain guys aren't there. Like Xavier Legette. I know that we're not the only team eyeballing Xavier Legette. And I've already said, if you're a team like Carolina and you don't have a number 1 wide receiver, why not take the hometown kid and make him your new number 1 wide receiver and give Tua an actual threat to get the football to? It makes a lot of sense, right? Top of the 2nd round, you're sitting right there with the 33rd pick. Take him. Or he could fall down the board because he's not a polished wide receiver. He's only got 1 year of true production. He's not a great route runner. There are flaws with Xavier Legette that could see him drop in a deep wide receiver draft class with other. I just talked about Adonai Mitchell. If you're Carolina, are you taking Adonai Mitchell or are you taking Xavier Legette? They already made the mistake last year of taking the perceived big physical receiver over a more polished receiver, and that did not work out for them. They took the Ole Miss receiver last year. He wasn't very good for them in his rookie season. Couldn't separate. Anybody could have told them that that was a mistake and it was too early, but they did what they felt like they needed to do. Felt like a panic pick, if you ask me, but that's nor here nor there. You're going to do that again? I don't think Xavier Legette is a panic pick, but if there are other receivers on the board that are more polished, that are more established, that can come in and immediately give you what you're looking for, are you going to take that guy or are you going to take Xavier Legette? I think Legette is interesting because he could easily be there at 67. I still contend that he won't be. If a guy like Legette is there or somebody else like a Blake Fisher is sitting there and you haven't taken tackle at all yet, I can't trade out of 67, right? If Patrick Paul is there and you like Patrick Paul and you haven't taken tackle yet, you can't trade 67. However, if you've already addressed tackle at 36 or 40, and you've already addressed receiver at 36 or 40, and you don't love the tight ends that are there at 67, or you've already addressed receiver and tackle, and Jatavion Sanders is somehow still sitting there, you can't trade 67. But if you've already taken Sanders or you've already taken a receiver, you've already taken a tackle, I think 67 could be in play for a trade back scenario. But for me, I want to keep that pick towards the top of the 3rd round. I want that pick. The one that to me seems real tradable is the one in the middle that we got from Seattle in that trade with Sam Howell, which is 78. That's the one that feels like, hey, if there's a guy here that you like, hit my line. That would give you and that's why these 3 picks are so intriguing, because it gives you the flexibility to maybe pick up a 4th round pick. It gives you the flexibility to maybe package up 2 of these thirds, go back into the 2nd to get a guy that's sitting there. Maybe Jatavion Sanders, a little too early for you. There was a big-time receiver there. There was a tackle there that you liked. You got those 2 positions knocked out. Or Chop Robinson was there at 36, couldn't pass that up, so you took him. And then at 40, there was a receiver there that you loved, right? Worthy was there, you took him. Or Adonai Mitchell was there, you still there somehow, you took him. And you get to, 51, and you're like, all right, man, I'm getting antsy. Let's package up a couple of these 3rd round picks and go get Jatavion Sanders. Or Patrick Paul, or one of these tackles. Kingsley Suamataia is sitting there, and you're like, all right, I'm getting antsy. He's not going to make it to 67. Let me package up a couple thirds and go get Kingsley. Let me package up a couple picks. Go get Patrick Paul, whomever you did, because these tackles, they're going to start going. And that's when you get a little nervous, when these tackles start going. And you start looking at that list, and it starts dwindling and dwindling and dwindling. And you're going, we said it was a deep draft, but hey, how deep we trying to go here? That's where those 3rd rounders come into play, because it gives you that flexibility of trading back, picking up a 4th, trading up, getting another 2nd, trading up in the 3rd, right? Staying in the 3rd with 3 thirds, but trading up. Maybe you give up that other 3rd round pick to move up 5 spots in the 3rd round, to ensure that you get Blake Fisher, to ensure that you get XYC receiver or corner, right? Day 2 is going to be so impactful, because this is the draft, guys. This is the draft that is going to be the foundation for what we are trying to build in Washington. And it's going to be day 2 of this draft, not day 1 with the quarterback. The quarterback is going to determine how quickly success is achieved here. That's what day 1 is going to mean for us. Day 2 is going to be what ultimately builds this football team. Day 2 is what's ultimately going to make us competitive no matter what happens at quarterback. That's what day 2 is for us. 5 selections? 5 selections in a span of 64 picks from 36 to 100. You got 5 selections. That's what's going to help build this team. You got to hit. You got to hit them. You got to be decisive. You got to know what you want. You got to know what you're after. You got to be aggressive. If it's a guy there that you like, don't wait. Participate. Go get him. Go be great. But this day 2, we talk so much about day 1. What the hell they're going to do? They're only going to select 1 of 3 guys at 2. There's only so many conversations that can be had about what they do at number 2. I'm done with that shit. Y'all go ahead and have at it. I'm going inside. It's dangerous outside. Y'all ain't bullshitting. I'm safe inside with the door locked. I feel good inside. I'll watch the carnage from my window. I want to talk about day 2 because this is where it's at. You could get you a tight end, a receiver, an edge rusher, a corner, and a tackle all in one day. All in one day. Think about that. With all the things that we've done in free agency. And again, most of these have been Band-Aid solutions. The draft is where you build your roster. Free agency is where you supplement your roster. We've put ourselves in a position to be aggressive, but also take best player available in the draft. Now the question is, are they going to take advantage And I think that's why they've done the things that they've done. As you continue to look at the things that they've done, continuing to add low-level 1 year, free agents and these contracts, bringing in guys that are going to fill the back end of the roster, put you in a position where you don't have to draft a running back. You don't want to. I don't love Jeremy McNichols, okay? Neither do you. But guess what? If they decided to wait till next year to address running back, you can do that. You can do it. Because you have 3 guys on the roster already and you added Jeremy McNichols. You can go into camp with an extra guy that you signed as a priority free agent after the draft was done and let them battle it out for a potential 4th and final roster spot at running back. You could add another running back. Somebody could cut loose a running back after the draft, or with their final cuts, somebody drafted a 5th round running back that you like, they cut him, you can bring him on. Because again, we're going to have roster flexibility. This is unlike the last 2 years or so with Rivera, where the roster was kind of set, right? We kind of knew what it was. This is more like at the beginning of Rivera's, tenure, where we were poaching guys from other rosters because we didn't have shit. So if you cut somebody that you drafted in the 5th round, look out. Here we come. Because we don't have anybody at roster spots 45 through 53 that have to be here. We got placeholders. And that's what the case is going to be this year. We're going to have placeholders. James Pierre is not guaranteed to be on this football team. He's not. He's one of those guys I'm looking at. Jeremy McNichols is not guaranteed to be on this football team. That's another guy you're looking at. You go, are you really sticking around? Hey, rent. Don't buy. This could be really short, right? What we can do in day 2, I'm telling you, has a chance to be super impactful to this roster. And I'm excited to see, because we're going to learn a lot about this group. Adam Peters, a.k.a. Chef P, Lance Newmark, and Dan Quinn, and what they're looking for. What's Adam Peters' style here in Washington? We attribute a lot of things to Adam Peters from San Francisco, but he wasn't in charge. He was a part of the brain trust, but he wasn't in charge. His word carried a lot of weight, and he helped a lot, but it was still John Lynch's show. So we still really don't know exactly what to expect from Chef P and what he's cooking up come late April. This is going to go a long way in helping determine what his style is. Is he aggressive? We've seen the 49ers be aggressive when they've seen guys that they want. Is he going to be aggressive and trade back into the 1st round? Is he going to be aggressive and package up picks to move back up into the 2nd round? Is he going to trade back? We've seen him trade back, or we've seen the 49ers trade back 1 spot, allow Tampa Bay to come up and get their tackle, move back 1 spot, pick up, draft capital, and still get their guy, making a shrewd move. Will he do that in the 2nd round with the 2 second-rounders? Will they do that with the 3rd-rounders, having 3 of them? It's nothing to move back 3 or 4 spots and pick up an additional pick. You could do that in the 2nd round too. You're sitting there at 40. You like what's there, but you don't love it. Somebody's banging your line like, bro, please pick up the phone. You pick up and they desperate. They sitting there at 44. Move back 4 more spots. It ain't going to kill me. Pick up that 4th round pick I was talking about. You can do it in the 2nd round. So again, so many options are available. That day 2 is going to be something else. Let's get to the comment section. Start the night off with Calvin Krim. Thank you for the super chat. Calvin Krim, thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Greatly appreciate you. Calvin Krim writes, hey, Lou. What's up, Calvin? The more I think about it, the more I want to invest in a wide receiver. We need a wide receiver 2 that can turn into a wide receiver 1 next year. Dotson just isn't that. We'll come back to that comment. McLaurin will be 29. A second-round wide receiver could be what we need to line everyone up. I don't disagree with anything that you've said, other than I challenge you on Dotson isn't that. We don't know that he's not that yet. He showed a lot of things in his rookie season, did Jahan Dotson. A lot. And if not for the injury, the man was on a torrid pace in that rookie season. He led the team in touchdown receptions, having missed like 5 games. He still had like 500 and something yards receiving, having missed 5 games. He was outstanding for us, especially early in his rookie campaign. That injury really set him back because he was doing Ullman-like work when he was actually a focal point of the offense. Unfortunately, a lot of guys suffered last year because of Eric Bieniemy. Speaking of which, did y'all see Eric Bieniemy in his feelings? He was at UCLA and somebody asked him about the Commanders and what happened and why he's not still there. And he said, you got to go ask the Commanders about that. I can answer that for you. You could have just came to me and I could have told you his ass was funky last year. That's what it was. And it's guys like Jahan Dotson and Terry McLaurin who really suffered last year with that approach of we're going to do things my way and we're not going to prioritize getting playmakers the ball. We're just going to spread it around to everybody. I'd much rather have Jahan Dotson with 7 targets and not 3 of them being, throws out of bounds that he was the closest receiver. So technically it's a target, like real targets with him running away from a defender, like a slant. I'd much rather him have those than have that be the Logan Thomas or John Bates, right? And Jamison Crowder and guys that aren't going to do anything with it after they catch it. It's not the same. Don't try to convince me that, having more options to get the football to and spreading teams out and throwing it to Logan Thomas on a stick route 5 yards, up the field is a better option than getting Jahan Dotson the ball on a slant. Like we did at the end of the 2022 season against Dallas when we put him in the slot and ran a slot slant and he was able to catch it and then run for an additional 15, 20 yards after the catch. Twice. Shit's not hard. But I digress. He was one of the guys that really didn't benefit from that style of play calling last season. So I don't know if you can honestly say he's not capable. I'll say this. We do need another guy. I agree. And Terry being 29, his 29 looks a little bit different than most 29s because you got to remember, Terry was a late bloomer. Terry has a lot more mileage left on his tires than the normal 29-year-old wide receiver. Came into the league probably at 24 years old, is my guess, did Terry. Somewhere in that neighborhood, because he stayed at Ohio State for quite a long time. And again, I don't think he is like the guy that came into the league at 21 or 22 and lit it up right away and has put a lot of mileage. I think he's got a lot of good football left ahead of him. I mean, well into his 30s, I think personally. But I don't disagree with you on needing another receiver and a guy to come in and help kind of solidify the room. I wouldn't count Dotson out as a guy that could be a legitimate bona fide number 2 in this league. Right now, I'm not shopping for a number 2 receiver, by the way. Shopping for a third option. I'm not asking a rookie to come in here and be a number 2 receiver. We don't have to do that. Some teams have to ask a rookie to come in and be their number 2 or a number 3. or number one, rather. Excuse me. Some people don't have the luxury that we have of having a established number one and a former first round pick already ready to go out of the packaging. We're looking to add a guy to come in here and complement those two. And whatever production we get from him is an added benefit and bonus in his rookie season. And then year two, we can ask this dude to really start to come into his own and be one of the focal points of the offense. So many times over the last 7 years or so, we've drafted young receivers and we've thrusted them into this spotlight and have needed their production instead of wanting their production or having it be an added benefit. Josh Doxson, we needed his production. He got injured early in his rookie season. We needed his production. That's why when he wasn't in the lineup, it was so noticeable. We didn't have anybody. We needed Antonio Gandy Golden. You should not be needing a fourth-round pick's production. We needed Antonio Gandy Golden to step up in his rookie season. That wasn't fair to him. But when you're desperate, that's what happens. We needed De'Ami Brown to come in here because he was supposed to be number 3 and Curtis Samuel got hurt. And all of a sudden, we're asking De'Ami, bro, we need you. The goal is to not need this receiver to come in here and be a stud. The goal is to have him come in here and fill in a gap and hopefully be an afterthought offensively and a guy that ultimately blossoms in a third, fourth wide receiver role early on. And then as the season progresses and he gets more comfortable and acclimated in the offensive attack and they figure out ways to best utilize him, they call his number more, and then he becomes more of a guy you can rely on. That's the hope. That's the hope. That's the way that I'm viewing this right now. All right. Thank you for that super chat, Calvin Krim. John Perez, my guy, JP. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. JP, thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Writes, excuse me. Lou, good to see you as always. Likewise, JP, always good to hear from you, man. Says, been a minute. Has it? It felt like it might have been like a week or two. I know you had hit me up on socials and was like, hey, man, missed your last stream or two. So it's been a little bit. Says, my Google Pay have been acting up the last couple of days, which is why I haven't been able to super chat. It's all good, man. Just always good to hear from you. As for what we should do, day 2, maybe take a D end or an offensive tackle. Those are definitely in play. I mean, obviously, tackle to me remains atop the list of items that you're looking to take care of in day number 2, whether that's in the second or third round. The value has to be there at tackle. Again, I'm not a Jordan Morgan fan. I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm not a Jordan Morgan fan. So he might be the best of what's left at the top of the second round. I'm not looking to reach for any of those tackles. Like nobody else is probably going to, from a value standpoint, going to really excite you if the first round goes the way that I think it's going to go from a tackle perspective. All of the guys that would interest me at 36 will be gone. And so you'll be left potentially, because Jordan Morgan himself could go in the first round. You'll be left with guys like Morgan, potentially, Omegadeji, Kingsley, Suamataia. Again, these are guys that I don't think are worthy of the 36th overall pick, right? So I think as you get towards the midpoint of the second round, that's when those guys kind of start to come into play. Again, get your guy when you feel the need to get your guy. And if you feel like, hey, we don't want to have to package up picks to come back into the second round, when we could just take a guy at 40, so be it, right? Because at the end of the day, you may have to package up picks to come back and get another guy anyway. Like, say you take a a receiver and a tackle, and you really want Jatavion Sanders, you might have to package up some picks and get him in the second round anyway. Say you take Jatavion Sanders and you take a wide receiver, or you take Jatavion Sanders and the edge rusher, you might have to package up picks to get your tackle anyway. So you may ultimately end up doing that regardless of what you decide to do. So just take the guy that you feel like I have to make sure I get this guy. So edge rusher isn't one of those positions that is a dire need. I've said this already. Clearly they're interested. And well, I shouldn't say clearly. Their top 30 visits, their official 30, they've shown already is that they are interested in adding an edge rusher. All right. With Breeland, Nealon, Marshawn Nealon, Chop Robinson, and John Baptiste from Notre Dame. They've shown that they're interested in adding an edge rusher, or at least it's a position that they're sniffing around. John Baptiste makes a ton of sense from a late round perspective, like 5th round, right? Toolsy guy, undersized, but has the ability with proper coaching to be a problem down the road. Like, he's a Dante Fowler Jr. type, just raw and rough around the edges. That one makes sense. Right, former Ohio State Buckeye, transferred to Notre Dame for his final year of college ball, and looks the part. Blew up, I won't say blew up the combine, but was extremely athletic and tested really well at the combine. That's the kind of guy that makes sense. Like, again, Quinn loves these undersized guys that can use that athleticism to be disruptive up front, which is why I'm telling y'all, do not sleep on a Johnny Newton or a Braden Fisk if those guys are available at the top of the second round, because these are the types of players that Dan Quinn loves to deploy when trying to create havoc up front for the opposing team's offensive line and protection schemes. So D end is one of those positions where it's got to be right. It's got to be the right fit. It's got to make sense. It's got to be a great value, or else you can go in a different direction. Tackle is non-negotiable. They need to have a tackle that they've drafted at the end of day 2, right? Like, it may not be in the second round, but somewhere in that third round with those 3, you better come away with at least a tackle. I'm going to be really disappointed if we haven't addressed the tackle position at some point within those 5 selections, because, again, you don't have a 4th round pick. So now you're floating around these 5th rounders, and, again, that's a dangerous way to live. If you're going to spend the number 2 overall pick on a quarterback, you best damn well invest in protecting that asset. I don't see them not doing that. I can't see them deciding to pass on the tackle position altogether with the 6 picks that they have in the top 100. John Perez, my guy. JP, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, can we have a real conversation about going back in the first round after getting the quarterback? Penn State defensive end Chop Robinson would be my selection personally. There's a real conversation to be had. We've started that conversation already. I've brought it up tonight. I think that if you only think that they could go back into the first round for a tackle, you're too close-minded. I've already brought that up on various videos, not just this one, but I'm going to reiterate what I said tonight, which is the likelihood of them trading back into the first round for anything but a tackle seems to be slim and none. But I wouldn't rule out like corner or something like that. I think edge rusher is a bit presumptuous. I think that's a bit too aggressive, because you don't really need an edge rusher that bad to where you should be willing. Like, if he falls into your lap at 36, you damn right pull the trigger, right? I've already made that point. You've already had him in your building for an official 30 visit for a reason. You're interested. He fits the Dan Quinn DNA profile. Explosive edge rusher that you can move around and do some things with. It makes a ton of sense. But are you willing to give up draft capital to select a guy at a position where you've already signed 4 free agents? I just don't see that being the case. Now, if he falls into your lap, make it happen. Pull the trigger. I'm all for it. So I think it's going to be tackle. If they go back into the first round, that is a position of need. Okay. Adam Peters could sit there with a straight face and look us in our eyes and tell us we don't need tackle. You know, we got tackles on the roster. Sure, you're right. Look, I love Cole Luke just as much as the next man. But I'll be damned if I'm going to sit here and let you tell me that our tackle position is A-okay just the way it is. Like, Trenton Scott, seriously, let's not do that. Let's not do that. Let's not act as if he's a starting caliber NFL tackle. Let's not do that. Swing tackle, sure. Starting tackle, no, let's not do that. So that's a position you could trade back up into the first round to get. And I can see that happening. Beloved Rain 44. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Beloved Rain 44 writes, Louie, what's going on? What's going on, Beloved Rain? You mentioned a civil war amongst the fan base. When will the bloodshed end? LOL. My guess is the hope, I should say. The hope is a year or two from, let's say, January. So they make the selection. The bloodshed does not end when that selection is made. It only amplifies one side of that discussion, right? One side of the war is going to be amped up even more because they didn't get their guy, okay? The only way to quiet that side that didn't get their guy is for the guy that was selected to play really well very quickly, early on, to dispel any notion of they made the wrong decision. Because no matter what the other guy does or is doing or isn't doing, if our guy's performing well, we don't need to be over there worried about what somebody else is doing. It's the same conversation we had last year in the first round with the cornerbacks. We were all looking to see what Christian Gonzalez was doing because we were like, our dude ain't hitting on shit right now. Meanwhile, Christian Gonzalez was over there early in the season balling in New England. And we knew that it was going to be, those two are going to be tied at the hip. Every time we talk about the first round pick in 2023, we're going to look at those two guys and compare and contrast because that was the guy that we all want, well, most of us wanted in Washington. It was Christian Gonzalez. And they were hell-bent on drafting Emmanuel Forbes Jr., and we'll see how it turns out. You know, the jury's still out on that. But the bloodshed doesn't end until either the quarterback proves that he's legit or he doesn't. And the side that won the war, or the battle, I should say, because the war won't end. They'll just win one of the biggest battles of the war in getting the quarterback. You don't win the war until a decision has been made, whether that quarterback is good and you got it right, or he's not good and we got to do this over again. That's when the war actually ends. The hope is they get it right and it ends immediately, like CJ Stroud last year. And everybody shut up, put your weapons down, let's all come together, and now let's all be on the same accord for a common goal. That won't happen until we figure out if this guy is good or not. So the bloodshed doesn't end until either this quarterback is proven to be the right man for the job or he's not. Lord, please let this guy be the right man for the job. Because I don't know if a lot of us can handle this back and forth bickering for, 3 more years. Plus, you go into another draft And God forbid it's another one of these situations where you got 3 options. We got to do this again, right? So let them get this right. JP, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, JP, writes, you think JD5 could be the Pickett too? Of course. That goes without saying. Absolutely, he could be the Pickett too. I don't. It's 50-50. It's either him or Drake May. I'll tell you this. From what I've seen with this fan base, it appears to me that more of the fan base wants Jaden Daniels as the quarterback versus Drake May. Excuse me. Here's why I say this. And I can't say this with 100% certainty because sometimes, much like the Kirk Cousins situation years ago, the loudest isn't always right. And it isn't always reflective of the masses. It just means they're the loudest, right? So wise man once said, the strong move silent, the weak start riots. And just because people were screaming Kirk Cousins is trash, we got to move on, doesn't mean that the bulk of the fan base didn't want to keep Kirk, because I think there were more of us in the fan base that wanted Kirk here. The ones that didn't were just louder. The ones like myself and others who wanted Kirk, we just didn't have the energy to keep yelling back and forth because we weren't going to change the minds of those who wanted Kirk gone. So there was no reason to argue with them. At this point, I think the louder voices are for that of Jaden Daniels. Doesn't mean that it's the right decision. It just means that I think there are more of those people. I actually think they're louder and there are more of them. If you look at my videos, all of the Drake May videos, they're doing okay. All of the Jaden Daniel videos are far superior from a numbers standpoint. When we have discussions, the Jaden Daniels stands are out in full force, and the Drake Mays are hanging on, it feels like, by a thread. And they're having to defend themselves, and even when they're being rational and they're not looking to start a fight, the Jaden Daniels stands are looking to pick a fight. They want all that action. They want all the smoke. And we could get to draft day and it could not be Jaden Daniels. And if it's not, I've said this already, so this isn't a surprise, but I've told you this. I truly believe Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury want Jaden Daniels. And it is going to be up to them to convince Adam Peters, because I don't think he is as sold on Jaden Daniels. And again, I have no proof of this. This is just me throwing a dart, right? Just based off of what has been said, based off of how I know guys think. I think they're going to have to convince Adam Peters that this is the right decision. So we'll see what happens. But then Daniel Jeremiah the other day said, just FYI, a little food for thought, you do the dishes. Dan Quinn had his most success with Matt Ryan. The guy that's closest to Matt Ryan in this draft is Drake May in terms of the skill set. May's much more athletic than Matt Ryan ever was. But the skill sets that they have are a little bit more in line with one another. So there's that. But again, we will see. Caps fan 7878. Stand up. You are the newest member of the MOBB mob. Y'all know what to do. Show Caps fan 7878 some love. Welcome him with open arms. Show him what it's like to be a member of the MOBB. Caps fan 7878. Welcome to the squad. Glad to have you. Trevor Patch. Been a member for 29 months. I'm awake, Lou. I'm awake. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. The troll, the biggest troll of all the trolls, is awake and ready for some action. Time for some action. Time for some action. Says the war has rewoken the, I don't know what those emojis are for, but we'll call it the beast. Well, if anybody can stir up a war, it's you, Trev. I'm inside, so I'm watching from afar. Do your thing, Wody. Do your thing. Edward Berkeley. Stand up. You are now the newest member of the MOBB. Mob, show Edward some love. Welcome him with open arms. So glad to have you on board. Welcome to the squad, Edward Berkeley. Duncan Wright. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy Duncan writes, you want to hear my prediction? Here's my prediction. Your team's gonna suck. Thanks, Duncan. Wouldn't be a show without you. Thanks, buddy. Sean Moore. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Sean Moore, writes, I think we take Drake or Jaden at 2. Then take one of our twos, or one of our twos, excuse me, and one of our 3s, and try to trade back into the middle of the first and get one of those good tackles. And that's what I said to keep an eye out for. And the only guy that I think they'll be willing to do it for, because it's the only one that I think has a chance to fall. Only guy that I think has a chance to fall in this draft at the tackle position that's worth doing that for is Amarius Mims. I don't think Tyler Guyton, who probably is going to go in the first round, I don't think he's worth doing that for. Latham won't be there. Fatanu won't be there. Fuaga won't be there. Alt won't be there. More likely than not, Fasanu won't be there. So to me, the only guy that will be there potentially is Amarius Mims. That's the guy you look out for, and I think that's what you do is you package up more likely than not 36, and 78 would be the one I'd be willing to trade. I'd have to look at the points value chart to see which one of those thirds you'd have to give up. But a lot of times, if you're asking a team to leave the first round, you're not going to get away with just a second and a third. You know, you're probably going to have to give up like a second this year and a second next year, or a second and a third and then a fifth or something like that, or a second this year, a third this year and a fourth next year. Like, it's not just a second and a third this year and that's it. There's like an added tax involved when I got to move out of the first round altogether. Like, I'm trying to remember what the Texans got from Minnesota to move out of the first round altogether. But I think they got a second, which is what they traded Buffalo in the Stephon Diggs deal. Next, they got a second in 2025. So again, you're going to usually give up something that following year, right? If you're asking me to move completely out of the first round. Now, granted, we've got a very early second. Minnesota doesn't, right? Like, they're the 11th pick. We're the fourth in the second round. So you wouldn't have to go as far with our pick, but again, there's usually a tax that's built into that deal where you're probably gonna have to give up something the following year. But yes, that's kind of how I see it too. If you're gonna go back into the first round, it's gonna take a second, possibly a third this year, and it may even take something else that you have to throw in to sweeten the deal. Christopher McLaughlin, thank you for your generosity as always, my guy Chris. Thank you for the gift that keeps on giving of blessing those who aren't members with an opportunity to become members. Thank you for your generosity. Shout out to our guy, Chris McLaughlin. King of the Bluegrass, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. King of the Bluegrass writes, tackle is not an absolute at 36 or 40. Agreed. You don't have to go tackle at either one of those positions. But you do have to address tackle in day 2. I am a firm believer in you can't go 3 picks deep in the 3rd round and not address tackle if you haven't done it already in the 2nd round. So initially, before they re-signed Cornelius Lucas, the thought was, hey, you got to do something at 36 or 40, and you may even have to use both of those picks on a tackle. Now that's lessened that need, but you still have to do something because you don't have, to me, 2 starting tackles on the roster right now. You've got 1. So, and you might have a couple of guys that in a pinch can kick out to tackle, but we don't want to have to explore those guys, right? So, again, the prevailing thought is get you a starter somewhere in day 2. If you haven't traded back into the 1st round to address it, get you a starter in day 2, whether that's the 2nd round or the 3rd round. Makes me no difference. If you don't love the value, and I think there's a chance they just don't love the value. I don't think I would personally love the value at 36 or 40. You know, if the draft goes the way that I think it has a chance to go, with the players coming off the board that I think are going to come off the board, I don't think the value is going to be there. Now, they might actually like Jordan Morgan. I don't. But that's their prerogative. If they like him, they might take him at 36. All right, let's roll, right? It is what it is. I don't love him at 36. And especially, you know, with the ACL injury, the shorter arms, I don't love him. I don't love him at all. But we'll see, right? It's not an absolute, to your point. And it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. King of the Bluegrass, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, I absolutely love Blake Fisher, and I believe he will be there late 2nd, early 3rd. As do I. He's a name that is starting to gain a little steam and traction, though. So he's one of those guys that when I say you might have to package up some picks and go back into the, 2nd round, in one of my mock drafts, the one with trades, there was an opportunity to get Jatavion Sanders. The 49ers, you do business with a former friend. We see that quite often in the league where you do business with those that you're very familiar with. 49ers were sitting there at the back end of the 2nd round. Sanders was still there. You weren't sure if he was going to make it to 67. They were sitting there at 63. You just trade back into the 2nd round. You give up a little something. I think we gave up a 5th rounder to do it, 139 in that particular trade. And you keep it pushing, right? So might take a little bit more than that. But again, Blake Fisher might be one of those dudes that you may have to spend a late 2nd, to your point. I don't know if he'll be there at 67. When this process started, he would be there at 67. And now that we've gotten a little bit deeper into this process and people have really dug into the film and they see the talent, and keep in mind, much like Joe Alt, who's super young, right? Alt's 21 years old. and he's a puppy, right? So is Blake Fisher, who is a red shirt sophomore. Okay. The only difference between he and Joe Alt is that Alt started as a freshman. Fisher did not, and thus, he had the red shirt, but he's just as young, arguably more talented. I think people think raw ability-wise, he's got more of it than Alt. He's just not the technician, and the consistency just hasn't been there. But people don't care about that when it comes to offensive tackles. Do you have the ability or not? We can take care of the rest. If you feel good about your coaching staff, you feel good about your O-line coach, we can take care of the rest. Just give me a guy with the traits, and I can do the rest. And Fisher has the traits. So I don't know if he'll make it to the third round. He feels like one of those dudes that's not going to make it to the third round. But I, too, like him as well. King Dre, been a member for 7 months. Greatly appreciate you. King Dre writes, he says, it's Lou, spill the tea now on the NFC Super Friends. I think it's been a while now, LOL. Oh, you're not getting anything out of me. And when I said I may tell y'all down the road, I'm talking way down the road, And who knows? Something could happen in the future. I told you, don't rule it out. But as of now, don't look for it. I'll just say that. Christopher McLaughlin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, my guy, Chris. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Chris, thank you once again for the generosity. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for gifting those memberships. Thank you for your generosity with the super. As always, my guy, Chris, writes, hey, Lou. What's up, Chris? Hope all is well with you and the family. Likewise, as always. Says 3 questions. 1/2, what impact do you think trades will have on day 2? 16 trades done in rounds 2 and 3 last year. In the end, is it BPA? And 3, how would you rank personnel for our offense and defense in the division, and why? I think trades are going to be very impactful. That's part of the reason why I said day 2 for me is going to be more impactful than that of day 1, even though day 1 is going to garner all of the attention. To me, day 2 is where we're going to really see the most impact from this draft in terms of roster building. Now, the quarterback can expedite this process if you hit it, which is what makes that the more intriguing of all of the days of selections. But when it's all said and done, we got 9 selections, and 5 of them potentially are going to be made in day number 2. Now, as you mentioned, a lot of trading going on in day 2. And I think this is another one of those drafts where trades are going to be very prevalent in day 2. And we are a team that I think is going to have a lot of activity. The phone is going to be ringing quite a bit because we've got the most selections in this stretch of any team in the draft. So more likely than not, if somebody wants to move up, we're going to be one of the first teams that they look to call, especially if a player is there at the picks that we have. We've got so many of them. So I assume that we'll be listening. I don't think we'll be rigid. I think they'll be open to trading up, trading back. And so it's going to make for a very fascinating day 2, if you ask me. Let me just say this. I don't think Washington will make 5 selections in day 2. I could see them making 6. I could see them making 4. I don't think they're going to make 5. Meaning they're either going to trade back, pick up an extra pick. They're going to trade up, package up a couple picks. But I don't know, like 5, if they make 5, selections and don't do anything, I'll be shocked. I'll be shocked. I won't be upset. We got 5 picks. I'm content if they do nothing but just make selections where they sit. I'll be content. But I do expect the trades to be impactful. And I do expect us to be a part of that. And yes, to me, it is BPA. I don't think you reach for a tackle at 36 or 40. As we just talked about, as King of Bluegrass just brought up, you don't have to take a tackle at 36 or 40. I would actually advocate that you don't if you don't love what is available to you. And I've already said, I don't think that I'm going to I'll take Tyler Guyton at 36 if he's there. I don't think Tyler Guyton is getting to 36. I'd take Tyler Guyton at 36 if he's there. Don't think he will be, though. I don't want Jordan Morgan. I don't think that's great value. But again, if they like Jordan Morgan, they've already had him in for a top 30 visit, so be it. My thing is, you don't have to press the issue. If you don't love what's there, take best player available, keep it pushing. Keep it pushing. That's how you improve your roster. So I expect them to do that. As far as ranking personnel for our offense and defense in the division, right now, I would say that we're at the bottom of the totem pole in just about every category, with the exception of linebacker, and which is crazy because we've been at the bottom of the barrel at linebacker for years, it's felt like. But with the acquisitions that we've made with Frankie Louie and Bobby Wagner in particular, and even the Michael Walker addition, which I loved, you could argue that we've got the best linebacking core in the division. Now, the Giants got some great play out of Bobby Okereke last year, and the Eagles signed Devin White, but we'll see. I think ours is still stronger than, and the Cowboys have nothing at linebacker now. I mean, if you count Michael Parsons as a linebacker, that changes things. But if you count him as an edge rusher, which he essentially is, they've got nothing. We'll see what DeMarvion Overshown does coming back from his injury, and some of the other guys that they may have in the mix. But Leighton Vander Esch retires, and I'm looking at the rest of their linebackers, and it's just not an impressive group. So outside of backer, defensive tackles, if we're getting specific, but if you're just defensive line, we probably are. I'd say we're probably at the bottom of the defensive line barrel. Giants have one dominant defensive tackle and 2 edge rushers now with the addition of Brian Burns. Already have Kayvon Thibodeau, so I don't think we've got them beat. The Eagles did lose Fletcher Cox. They did lose Javon Hargrave the year prior, but they got the two Georgia, behemoths in there. Carter looks like he's a legit problem. Not really sure what to make of their edge rushing situation, but they did add Bryce Huff. They kept Josh Sweat, so I think that gives them some flexibility. And they did draft the other Georgia edge rusher last year in the first round, so they got some stuff, and they still have Brandon Graham. So I think they're better than us right now. And Dallas they got Michael Parsons, and he's otherworldly, and he changes things. So I'd still put us at the bottom if you're talking about, defensive line. Our secondary stinks right now. And stinks is harsh. Our secondary is a question mark. honestly, none of the secondaries in this division are very good. Dallas's secondary, they don't have Stephon Gilmore anymore. You got Trayvon Diggs coming off of major surgery. Bland was outstanding last year, but I don't know if you can rely on their secondary. Eagles secondary was a mess last year. Giants secondary is young, and they lost Xavier McKinney. And our secondary is just a big question mark. So it's hard to gauge the secondary for Washington in terms of the division, because the division overall just isn't very good in the secondary. As far as offense is concerned, our receivers aren't better than Dallas. Our receivers aren't better than the Eagles, but we are better than the Giants. So we're third at receiver. Running back wise, Dallas is at the bottom of the barrel now. They don't even have a running back. And even if they sign Zeke or Dalvin Cook, I still put Dallas at the bottom. The Giants are below us as well. The Eagles are the only team I'd put ahead of us because they signed Saquon Barkley. And they already had a stable of backs, Kenneth Gainwell, the short running back. They already had a bunch of stuff. So Eagles 1, Washington's 2, Giants are 3 right now, and because they signed Motor Singletary, and then Dallas is 4th. And no matter what Dallas does, they can't hop us. So we're second. We're firmly entrenched at second at running back right now. Quarterback-wise, obviously, we are at the bottom until we draft our guy. And if the Giants don't do anything, we leapfrog them. But we're still behind Dallas and Philadelphia. So we're third in the division at quarterback, pending the Giants not doing anything. If the Giants add a quarterback, the combination of their rookie and Daniel Jones is better than the combination of our rookie and Marcus Mariota, is what I would say. So we're third, though. I think we'll ultimately be third at quarterback. Tight end, probably going to be at the bottom of this list, too, unless we add a tight end in this draft. If we add Jatavion Sanders, that's going to bolster our group significantly. I don't know if it's enough to leapfrog Dallas. They always get so much production out of their tight ends, and their guys stepped up last year. Ferguson was a beast. They still got Hendershot. I don't know if you can leapfrog them or the Eagles, even with the addition of Jatavion Sanders, just because those guys have done it already, right? Like, even though it's 1 year of Ferguson, he did it last year. We got Ertz, and he's done it a long time. It'll be interesting. If you get Jatavion Sanders, we might be able to leapfrog Dallas. I think you could leapfrog because Ertz has done it, right? You can't leapfrog the Eagles, though. They got stuff, and Dallas Goedert has been a problem. And I don't think you leapfrog them, but you get a big time tight end in this draft, and I think you could end up at second. Right now, you're probably last, because even with the Giants question marks, and I don't think they're going to get out of Darren Waller what they thought. He was contemplating retirement this offseason and all of that stuff. They might need to do something at tight end, to be honest with you. He's still a problem if he's healthy and he's mentally locked in. So I think we're probably last right now. You get a big-time tight end, though, and I think that rockets you potentially all the way up to 2. Did I forget it? An offensive line. Oh, yeah. Yeah. We have to be third, right? Like the Giants gave up, what, almost 100 sacks last year, right? Like we have to be third, right? They have to be last. Dallas lost a lot on their line this year. We took Biotis from them. Tyron Smith moved on. He's now with the Jets. They've got some things to shuffle around on their offensive line, and they've got to add to their offensive line, but they've always been so good at doing that. Eagles are clearly number one. I think Dallas is two. We're three right now, not by much. And then the Giants bring up the rear there. So that's how I think we stack up right now. A lot of work to be done. A lot of work to be done. Mr. Streeter, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Mr. Streeter, thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Writes, what's up, Lou? What's up, Mr. Streeter? How do you envision Derek Forrest's role in Quinn's and Witt's defense? Also, will you be attending the draft day party this year? I'll be there. So I can answer that for you, no. I'll be having my own draft party at home. At some point, and I've told this story enough to the point where y'all probably like, whatever, man, shut up. And I get that too. Before COVID, I was planning on having an actual draft party. At an actual physical location and, you know, mingling, meeting everybody and having a good time. COVID hit. It didn't happen. And I've never really gone through the process of trying to actually actively making that happen like I was prior to COVID. So at some point, I want to get to a point where we can do that in the near future. But I'll be doing the draft party here on the Louie T Network like I always do. And we have so much fun. Some of my most lit streams have been draft streams. There's been times where I've been 2 sheets to the wind, having a ball and a blast. One year, when I say it was 2 years ago, I think I was live for 9 hours straight. 9 hours, which is ridiculous. So we'll be doing that again. And I've got I don't want to put my foot in my mouth. I'll save that until I can confirm that first. Derek Forrest's role is interesting because we don't really know what they see in Derek Forrest and how they view him. I still think he's got a future in this league as a free safety. He's got the speed. He can run. He can hit. He's got ball skills. He's proven that in his career. I don't know if they envision him as that single high free safety type. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I think he should be given an opportunity to be in that mix. And I think a lot of fans have forgotten about him. I haven't. I continue to bring him up because if he is what he was back in 2022, it allows you to use Jeremy Chin the way that you brought him here to be utilized, which is a down around the box line, underneath zone coverage, physical presence, blitzing, aggressive linebacker type of hybrid safety, which is what you want him to be. So I think Forrest is important because he allows the flexibility of both safeties in Quan Martin and Jeremy Chin. If you don't have a true free safety back there, you can't be as aggressive. So hopefully he comes back healthy and he's locked in and they believe in him and he gets an opportunity. Because I don't trust Percival Butler back there. Neither should you. Video channel. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Video channel. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, Lou, video channel. How's the fam? Good. How about yours? Also, I'm inside, locked doors, and ain't going outside on some COVID 2020-ish. Social media distancing from all QB talk. Hey, I'm right there with you, man. I got about 5 locks on the door right now. Right. I'm like Dave Chappelle when he said, hey, man, they used to be looking at DC from Virginia with binoculars like, not yet. Not yet. That's kind of how I'm looking out the blinds. Like, oh, these bastards still fighting out there. I ain't going out there. Not yet. Not yet. I'm looking through the blinds, watching the carnage. I ain't going outside. It ain't safe out there, man. It ain't safe. Just Andre, thank you for the super chat. Or thank you for being a member for 26 months. EB got y'all thinking Jahan is trash. That is crazy. He's got a lot of people thinking crazy around these parts. There were a lot of people that were ready to turn on Terry last season. Remember the Terry conversation? Latter stages of last season? Look, he had this fan base ready to cut Jahan, trade Terry, and blow it all up. Right? He already got Sam out of here, which was unfortunate. And Antonio Gibson probably could have still been here if he was utilized correctly. Like, he effed a lot of shit up here. He really got people thinking Jahan is basic as hell, which is a damn shame. But it is what it is, right? I think this is a big time bounce back type season for Jahan, but we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. You're not wrong, though. You're not wrong, just Andre. Mr. Pink, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Mr. Pink writes, "Sup, Lou? Sup, Mr. Pink? Bummed we missed on Kincaid last year. Forbes isn't it, and we wouldn't need a receiver as bad. I digress. Who's your favorite corner this draft?" Well, my favorite doesn't matter because we're not going to get him. The top 2 corners I think are really good in this draft. I know that the Alabama corner isn't as fast. Like, he didn't time as fast. But Terrion Arnold is really good. And when you talk about playing sticky man coverage, I watched him at Alabama the last 2 years. And his man coverage was as sticky as it got in college football, if you ask me. Him, and I'm really intrigued by Quinyon Mitchell. Again, you're not getting either one of those guys. You're looking at that second tier of corners. I got work to do. I'm not even going to front. I just pulled I just popped the top on those corners. I've gotten through like 3 or 4 of them. And so I'm towards that back end of the first round range. And then there's a few guys that I've seen already that are, day 3 corners that I'm very aware of. There are a couple of day 2 guys like Cam Hart from Notre Dame that I'm very, very familiar with. Washington has had him in for a official 30 visit. So I've got some, working knowledge, but my favorite guys are the guys at the top of the draft. I told you already in my mock draft who my favorite late corner is. So, I told you one of the joys of watching film is when you stumble upon a guy indirectly. Now, I told you I don't like looking at minors. But this Will Johnson dude from Michigan, He's going to be something. He'll be available next year in the draft. Boy, I'd love to get my hands on somebody like that, but you got to suck pretty damn bad and not need a quarterback to get your hands on something like that. That's some top 5 shit. We won't be involved in those kind of conversations next year. I'd say Terrion Arnold is probably my favorite corner, but Quinyon Mitchell is intriguing, but he played at Toledo. I got to see it to believe it, but you can't coach 6'1", 205, 4'3", 40. You can't coach that shit. 6'2", I think he might be 6'2", 205, 4'3", 340 with that move, with those movements. That's some pretty intriguing stuff, but I've seen Arnold do it at a high level, so I know what he's capable of. As far as Forbes, I can't co-sign that because I don't know if Forbes is not good or not. I can't co-sign that. I almost have to throw away everything that we saw last year from this team and the players that were on the team last year. You almost have to throw a lot of that shit away. It was a lost cause, which is the same thing I said about like Michael Davis's performance with the Chargers last year. You almost got to throw that shit in the trash can. They were so poorly coached in LA defensively. You almost got to throw that shit in the trash. Same thing here. We were so poorly coached on both sides of the football that you almost better off just acting as if last year didn't exist, throwing that shit in the trash and hitting the reset button and starting anew. And I'm doing that with just about everybody that's here, including the rookies from a season ago. I'm not holding anything against them because it was a shit show last year. It really, truly was. LT, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. LT writes, it's Colt Paris with AJ and Smitty, top 3 trio in the NFL. Yeah, so you guys did sign Paris, Campbell, and AJ and Smitty. Like, everybody keeps waiting on Paris to do something. I'm more intrigued with the addition of the former Patriot and Dolphins receiver that you added. He's more impactful to me than Paris Campbell is. But the Giants thought they were getting something in Paris Campbell last year. What'd he do for the Giants? Not a damn thing. Colts thought he was going to do something. Not a damn thing. But what's the Parker, Devontae Parker? I'm more intrigued by his addition in Philadelphia than I am Paris Campbell. But it's a lot of shit in Philly, man. A lot of shit in Philly. Video channel, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, Lou, would you endorse Mekhi Becton on a 1-year heavy incentive Leighton deal? Has he not signed yet? Is he still a free agent? Yeah, absolutely. If he's still available, I don't know why, but I felt like he had already signed somewhere. But if he's still available, I think the reason he's still available, if he's available, I thought he already signed somewhere, but I could be mixing up the tackles. If he's still available, this is such a deep tackle draft class. You just wait. And then whomever ends up without a seat in this game of tackle musical chairs signs Mekhi Becton to a 1-year deal. If I were Washington, and they must not love him. They must not like him because you're signing all these guys to 1-year deals. Why not Mekhi Becton to a 1-year deal? Doesn't stop you from drafting a tackle. Why not let him come in and compete with Cole Luke and let the better man win and throw in a rookie tackle into the mix and see what you got, right? They said, nah, we good for now. Somebody will sign him if he hasn't been signed already. I'd be definitely open to it for sure. Navy Ramjet, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Navy Ramjet writes, Lou, you don't know Jack. We are clearly drafting Drake Daniels at 2 and a long snapper in round 2. Book it. Come on, April 25th. Sheesh. I've seen the Drake Daniels smash up or mash up before. That's the only way to settle the Civil War immediately, is to smash the two together and have Drake Daniels. But unfortunately, that can't happen. So the Civil War persists and continues. And I'm glad we signed a long snapper in free agency so we don't have to worry about even drafting one. I don't give a shit about 5th, 6th, 7th. I don't want to draft the long snapper at all. I've been scarred. So I'm glad we took care of that with Tyler Ott. We can just focus in on all the other positions. No kickers, no punters, no long snappers, none of it. Specialists are all taken care of. I like it like that. I like it like that. Young Savvy, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Young Savvy, double up. Thank you for doubling up. Young Savvy writes, new to your channel, want to say I like it. Well, I'm glad to have you on board. Hopefully you liked it enough to subscribe, and hopefully you'll be back for more content. That's always the goal, is to get you here. And then once we get you, we suck you in and you stay around. Pause. Throw a pause out there. But we draw you in and you keep coming back. That's usually the recipe, but getting people here is the key. But I'm glad you are here. Hopefully you enjoy it enough to come back and continue to come back. But really appreciate you stopping by, and hopefully I'll hear from you more in the future. Smack City, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Smack City writes, I get the team building point, but if they don't get the second pick right, everything else will be for nothing. Everything hinges on the second pick. Not necessarily. Organic growth hinges on the second pick. So a lot of people were killing Adam Rank, and Adam Rank ranks, right? He reeks. He's rank, all right? And clearly he does not like Washington. And that's fine. We don't give a shit, you know? All we got is us. All we've ever had was us. We don't look for outsiders to come in here and validate us. But he had a take the other day that got a lot of fans up in arms. At least 5 people sent it to me. And it was him essentially saying if he were Washington, he'd trade back. A quarterback isn't going to fix all of your ills. If you trade back with a team like, say, Minnesota, who's desperate to get into the top 3, you can get 2 first-round picks. You can really fast-track this thing. And that's what a lot of the people who are a part of the trade-back crowd have been saying. So it's not like this is a foreign way of thinking. It's just one that's unpopular. That said, he made the point, and he's not wrong, about other teams that have built that had their team and the infrastructure of it set, and then they were able to go out and get a quarterback in other ways, and it helped them win the Super Bowl. Case in point, the Rams. Case in point, the Buccaneers. Now, again, it was Stafford, future Hall of Famer, Brady, future Hall of Famer. That's not necessarily what we would have at our disposal, but he mentioned a name like Dak Prescott. I know that's not a popular name here, not a guy that I'm even interested in either, but you don't know who will eventually be available, right? We didn't expect guys that ultimately like Aaron Rodgers, and I think he's going to have a chance to win a Super Bowl with the Jets. You don't know how it's going to go. Building your roster is important because it puts you in a position, even if you don't have the quarterback, it gives you a chance that if you ultimately do find the quarterback, you take off, right? This notion that nothing else matters if you don't get the quarterback position correct, is false. Yes, it matters you have a quarterback because you're not winning anything of note without one. We can all agree on that. But to say that the rest of the roster doesn't matter would be irresponsible and reckless, because you got to have a good roster around your quarterback. What good is it having an Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady or a Trevor Lawrence or a Joe Burrow if you don't surround them with talent? We saw Joe Burrow in his rookie season without Jamar Chase, without T. Higgins. How did that fare? How'd that look? You gotta build up the team. You gotta have talent around that guy. You see what the Bears are doing? They're building up their roster so that when they drop Caleb Williams in at number 1, he's going to have all of the resources he needs on both offense and defense. So yes, getting it right at 2 is important, very important, but it's not the only thing, because you could get it right at 2 and the rest of the roster stinks. What does that mean for your young quarterback? What does that mean? Duncan Wright, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, tonight's speech has inspired me to be a better man. Uh-oh, here we go. From now on, I will speak just the facts, the way I see it, and I will take everything you say out of context. My gift to you, Lou. Thank you. I appreciate that very much, Duncan. That means a lot coming from you. That means a whole hell of a lot coming from you. King of the Bluegrass, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. King of the Bluegrass writes, you should do a WrestleMania watch along. Excuse me. Are you serious? Didn't WrestleMania already happen? Last time I checked, and I'm old, so when I was growing up, when I was an avid wrestling fan, which I am not anymore, which wouldn't do any good because I don't watch wrestling. I can't even tell you, I can't name one wrestler right now, not a single one. But WrestleMania used to always be in March, the last weekend, the last Sunday in March. Is that not a thing anymore? Is it in April now? Interesting. I think there were times towards the end of my wrestling fandom run where it would creep into that first Sunday in April, but it was always a March thing. WrestleMania was, because when I was growing up, every month had a specific event. So, and there were big ones, and then when I was a fan, it was in your house, right? For the months that didn't have. So, for instance, SummerSlam was always in August. Survivor Series was always in November. Royal Rumble was always in January. King of the Ring was always in June, right? So you knew WrestleMania was always in March. So they would fill in the gaps, like July was always an in your house pay-per-view. In the months that didn't have, like February, I think didn't have a pay-per-view. So they would have a house show in your house, right? So that's how I remember it. So you telling me WrestleMania is in April is a little weird to me, but anyway, I'm showing my age. I digress. They don't even do in your houses anymore. That was a 90s, that was probably a 90s thing. I don't even think that made it to the 2000s. Maybe it did early 2000s, but I digress. King of the Bluegrass, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. King of the Bluegrass writes, would like to see you and Bad Dog do a stream. You know, Bad Dog is my guy. And definitely, you'll see us together in the future at some point. I don't see why not. Um, I don't know if I wonder if he still watches wrestling. I don't know if that is the case or not. He doesn't strike me as a guy that watches wrestling anymore, much like myself, but he may still watch wrestling. I can't say. Anyway, Calvin Crimp, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, Lou, what's your dream scenario if we stay at 36 and 40? Mine are Tyler Guyton and Lad McConkey. Why don't you like Darius Robinson? Dude's a monster. I think he fits in certain defensive schemes, ours not being one of them. I think I look at Darius Robinson and I say, you're a San Francisco 49er, or you're a Baltimore Raven. You're a Pittsburgh Steeler. Like, he fits in an odd front defense. Someone that wants that physical 5 technique, edge setting, run stuffing, defender that can also get after the quarterback, but is more so a physical presence up front and stopping the run. Like, he doesn't strike me as a guy that's consistently going to get to the quarterback off of, like, he's a brute force guy. Big, physical. Again, 49ers, he kind of fits their DNA profile. He fits those 3-4 teams like Pittsburgh and Baltimore. Like, he'd be the perfect replacement. They lost Jadeveon Clowney in Baltimore. He'd be the perfect replacement. He strikes me as one of those type guys, right? He's not a quick twitch guy, which Dan Quinn is looking for quick twitch defenders, guys that are fast, get up the field, be disruptive. That's not who Darius Robinson is. And I myself am a big fan of those type of defenders as well. So I'm not telling you he can't play ball, and I'm not telling you he won't be a great fit on other rosters. I just don't think he's going to be a great fit here in Washington. So my dream scenario at 36 and 40 would be I would really like to see Washington get Sanders, which I expect him to be there at 36 and 40. A dream scenario would be getting a guy that I believe is a first-round pick in the second round. So it'd probably be like a realistic one. Like, a dream scenario would be, you get one of your favorite players in the draft at 36. That's not going to happen. Realistically speaking, which you gave a realistic dream scenario, because Guyton could be there at 36. The likelihood is he's not. But he could be. A dream scenario for me would be one of those defensive tackles at 36, and then a guy like Jatavion Sanders at 40, or Xavier Legette at 40, or someone like that. A guy that can come in and right away impact the football team. I don't want to reach for a tackle. Guyton would be great. I would love to get Tyler Guyton in the second round. I'd say, though, I'd prefer like a Newton, a Johnny Newton, or a Braden Fisk. If you can't get one of those tackles, like a Marius Mims, somebody like that to fall into your lap, that would be great. And then you'd go, and I'd love to see a Chop Robinson or one of those defensive tackles at 36 would be my dream scenario. And then you couple that with somebody on the offensive side. So receiver, tight end, one of those targets would be ideal for me. Somebody that you feel like has first round value that you're getting in the second round, at the top of the second round. And I think Chop Robinson and either of those two defensive tackles, Johnny Newton and Braden Fisk, all have first round type talent to me. So I'd be good with any of the three at 36. Chop Robinson would probably be at the top of the list though, because we could use a true difference-making edge rusher opposite of Dorrance Armstrong. We don't currently have that guy on the roster, and we signed everybody else outside of Dorrance Armstrong to one-year deals. So you're going to have to address that position next year, whether you like it or not. So if you can get one this year, great. And then it'd be probably Jatavion Sanders, because I think you can get a receiver later. I want the second best tight end in the draft. That's just my thought process. Versus the 7th or 8th or 9th best receiver. If it's such a deep draft class of receivers, which I think it is, then I can get the 12th or 13th best receiver, you know, or the I won't say best, the 12th or 13th receiver off the board and still feel good about it. King of the Bluegrass, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. King of the Bluegrass writes, am I invited to your draft party? I'll drive up from Kentucky. Look, the draft party is a virtual draft party. If we were having one at a location, absolutely everyone is invited. You could come from wherever. So yes, but everyone's invited to the virtual draft party. Eventually, we will get to the point where we're going to do this thing live and have an actual draft party. I think those are best done, though, when you're not picking second in the draft. Like, if we're actually really good, draft parties will be a lot more exciting, because if you're picking 27th, there's so much time for you to enjoy the draft, have fun. Your pick isn't coming anytime soon. You have a draft party, you're picking second. Everybody that's there for the Washington pick leaves after the second pick. And most of you wouldn't just leave after the second pick. You'd stick around for a while, but a lot of people would be there just for Washington's pick. Now they're gone, right? So, yeah, you're definitely invited. Mr. Ron B, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, what's up, Lou? What's up, Mr. Ron B, OG, triple OG? We may need to find a special envoy to broker a peace deal between the Daniels and May camps. I don't. Hey, good luck with that, man. Who you got in mind to broker this deal? I can't think of one entity. I can't think of one scenario other than whomever they draft immediately on some Robert Griffin III 2012 rookie season shit, quieting both sides and bringing peace and harmony to this situation. That's the only thing that stops the bloodshed and ends the Civil War and gives us peace and harmony and sanctity and a clear vision, unified as one. All we can do is hope and pray that that takes place. Honestly. Mr. Streeter, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, what you think, Lou? Was Peters part of the brainchild that bet the farm on Trey Lance or birthed Brock Purdy? He was definitely a part of the Trey Lance train, and he talked about that. And even now, he doesn't like to admit that that was a mistake. And I wouldn't admit it was a mistake either, because you don't know it was a mistake from a talent perspective. He just wasn't able to stay healthy. And then Brock Purdy did what he did, and that was that. We still, like, Trey Lance is still an enigma, because you don't know if he can do it or not at this level. It's not like he was Sam Darnold, and we've seen him start already in his league, and we know what he is. It's not like he's Mitchell Trubisky or even guys from that same draft class like Zach Wilson, for instance, or Mac Jones, where you go, okay, we know what they are. We have no idea what Trey Lance is. He may turn out to be a damn good starting quarterback in the NFL. Let's hope that that's not the case, because he's currently in Dallas right now. But you don't know. So, yeah, it looks like a train wreck on paper, because he never materialized into what they envisioned him being when they traded up for him, but it's hard to say that that was a bad decision from the standpoint of can he actually do it? It turned out to be a bad decision from a production standpoint, but you can't predict injuries, right? As far as I think there was somebody else there that was more so the brainchild or the person that was like, hey, we should take Brock Purdy. I don't know if that is actually charged to Adam Peters' account or not. He might have liked him a little bit, but I think there was a different scout that kind of unearthed Brock Purdy, and they took a literally the last pick in the draft flyer on Brock Purdy. It's not like they took him in the 5th round or something. So Chauncey Davis, OG triple OG, been a member for 30 months, writes, I believe in Adam Peters. So do I. Chef P is my guy. Chef P is my guy. Mr. Ron B, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, maybe Jeffrey Wright. Maybe Jeffrey Wright. Maybe. He's a man of many talents. Maybe he could be the voice of reason. Maybe Morgan Freeman can come in here and get them to call a truce with the voice of God. I don't know. It'd be pretty tough. It's not safe out there. I wouldn't send either one of those guys out there to risk life and limb with all of the carnage that is going on out there. I'm not going to send somebody else out there if I'm not willing to go out there. I couldn't dare send somebody else to do something that I myself am not willing to do. King of the Bluegrass, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB once again, who writes, if we're waiting till pick 27, the party better have handicap accessible entry because I'll be old. You think it's going to be that long before we get to that deep in the draft? That could be a lot sooner than you think. That could be in the next 2 or 3 years from now. Who knows, right? Who thought the Texans would be drafting 23rd or wherever they were drafting this year? Who thought that? You just never know, right? You just never know. Who thought the Lions? Right? Not I. There are a lot of people that believed in the Lions. Who would have thought the Lions would be drafting like 29th or 30th this year? Wow. You just don't know. You just don't know. Anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on this installment of the Command Post Live. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I don't know what the schedule looks like tomorrow as far as content is concerned. Excuse me. I will leave y'all a little something to chew on over the weekend, though. I got a great idea for a show that I want to propose to you guys. And then next week, we're going to really get in heavy to the draft as far as different position groups, ranking some of these positions. I gotta at some point, I gotta get going on this overall mock draft, right? I haven't even started on this thing. So I guess I got to get on the board there. I guess over the next week or two, I got to get cracking on this first round mock draft. But I got something else for you guys down the road, but we'll do that at a later date and time. Anyway, enjoy the rest of the evening. And I look forward to chopping it up with you guys next time. Mr. Ron B, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, fine, I'll do it. Mr. Ron B, it's not safe out there, man. Please, I beg of you, don't go out there. But if you do, be careful, man. Head on a swivel and just take some sort of weapon as protection, man. I'm not telling you to use it, but it's not safe out there. I'd hate to have to send somebody to come and get you because you got caught up in the mix and somebody done bopped you over the head and you were just trying to go out there. I've watched a lot of first 48 episodes where people have gotten smoked and they were just trying to play peacemaker, man. I'd hate for you to go out there trying to do the right thing and become a casualty of the Civil War. I feel like it's best if you just stay inside, like the rest of us who don't want any of the smoke. But if you want to do it, you have my blessing. Be careful. Please just take a weapon for protection. I beg of you. Anyway, that's going to do it for me, your man, Louie T. Until next time, you guys enjoy the rest of your evening. I'll see you guys on Saturday. I want to get to a podcast tomorrow. Hopefully I'm able to do so. I'm not going to guarantee that I will, but hopefully that's the case. Anyway, you guys, take care. Have a good one. God bless. Good night.